Hey, Paul here, and in this video, we're going to talk about how a parent unintentionally completely disinherited their children. Okay, so I'm Paul Rabley. I'm an estate planning attorney, and yes, I saw it again. I've seen it 1,000 times, and I'll see it another 1,000 times. This time, I got the phone call, of course, after the fact. And I got the phone call because, you see, I make it easy for people to talk to me. They can go on our website, or they can go into the description of one of my YouTube videos, click on a link and go right to my calendar and schedule a 15-minute phone call. Well, it happened recently. Oh, by the way, I'm making this video on Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. Bittersweet for me, first Mother's Day without my mother, who passed away late May of last year. Mothers are heroes. Happy Mother's Day to all mothers out there. Okay, so, and this is kind of appropriate to Mother's Day. It's kind of a mother-stepmother issue. Here's what happened. I got to lay it out for you. So let's call him Dad. Dad's first wife died decades ago after Dad and first wife had a son. Let's call him Sam. Then Dad remarried and lived for decades with, let's call her stepmom Sally. Lived with her for decades. And Dad and stepmom Sally sat Sam, who is Dad's child. Dad and stepmom Sally sat down at the kitchen table with Dad's son Sam and said, you know what, Sam, here's what me and Sally would like to see happen to our roughly $1 million estate in the future. We want to make sure, and Dad said, I want to make sure that after me and stepmom Sally both pass away, that half of our estate, and Dad said, that's kind of my half, I want that to go to my son, to you, Sam. And of course, stepmom Sally, she can do what she wants to with her half of the estate, but we want to make sure, they both told him, we want to make sure that half of our estate goes to you, Sam. Sam said, great, I'm thankful, and that makes sense, since I'm Dad's only child. And in fact, even stepmom Sally indicated that she may very well leave her half to Sam as well. So they had that conversation. In fact, they had it a couple of times. And then a few years later, Dad passed away, and he passed away with a last will and testament where he left ownership of his estate to stepmom Sally. Community property estate. They owned everything 50-50. They had been married for many, many years. There was no prenup. And so Dad, kind of maybe mistake number one, Dad left his estate, left ownership of his estate to stepmom Sally. And at the time that he did that, stepmom Sally had a will saying, if Dad predeceases me, then I leave my estate, to Sam. So Sam was good that Dad had left everything to stepmom Sally, because at the time Dad died, stepmom Sally had a will, leaving her part, leaving her estate to Sam. And so, Dad and stepmom Sally did all that together. So Sam was good with that. He kept supporting stepmom Sally. He kept calling her and checking in with her. And I'm sure he went and visited her on Mother's Day and had a card and all those, things that good stepchildren are supposed to do. And then a few years later, many years later, maybe about 10 years later, after Dad died, stepmom Sally passed away. And then it's discovered that 7 years prior to stepmom Sally's passing away, 3 years after Dad died, stepmom Sally created a new will. And in her will, she left $5,000 to Sam, her stepson, and she left the rest of her $1 million estate to her nieces and nephews. So I have to listen to that whole story from Sam, and Sam wants to know what his rights are. And I knew within 3 seconds of him starting the story, I knew what the answer was, but he never paused, and I had to let him finish telling his story. And then he said, Mr. Rabelais, before you tell me what my rights are, let me tell you 2 other important points that may affect what my rights are. He said, the first point I want to make real clear is my dad and my stepmom Sally on numerous occasions told me and my wife that they wanted me to get half of their estate after both of them died. And my dad and stepmom Sally also told their neighbor that's what they wanted. And dad and stepmom Sally also told their priest that's what they wanted. And so, based on all of that, surely I have some rights. And then the other thing I want to tell you, Mr. Rabelais, is those nieces and nephews of stepmom Sally that she left everything to other than $5,000, they don't need it. They are doing just fine. Stepmom Sally's nephew is a psychiatrist, and stepmom Sally's niece is a nurse. They are just doing fine for themselves. They don't need the money as much as I need the money. So I just wanted to make that clear, Mr. Rabelais, before we really talk about it, and you tell me what I should do from here. So I had to listen to all that whole story, and then when I get to that point where there's finally a pause and I get to say something, I usually have to ask a transition question because, people are wanting me to tell them what they want to hear, but I got to tell them things that they often don't want to hear. So my transition question is, okay, Sam, would you like me to tell you the blunt version or the sugar-coated version? And about 99% of the times they say, nope, tell it to me straight. We want to know, we want to know the blunt version. So what I told Sam was, you know what, Sam? It doesn't matter what your dad and your stepmom told you, told your wife, told their neighbor, told their priest, told the Pope, for that matter. All that matters is what's on the documentation. And your dad, while he told you he wanted you to have half of his estate, his will, and it's a valid will, left his entire estate in ownership to stepmom Sally. So after dad died, stepmom Sally owned it all. She owned her half. She was left ownership of her half, of his half. She owned it all. And then she certainly had the right, as long as she had the capacity to do so at the time that she did it, which she did 3 years after dad died. She wrote a new will. And she changed what her previous intention was as expressed in her previous will, and she had the right to do that. So she wrote a new will and left $5,000 to you and the other rest of her $1 million estate to her nieces and nephews. And it doesn't matter what they told who. What matters is on the proper documentation. That's why we have will laws. That's why we have validity requirements. That as long as that we have rules that must be followed. And so the fact that they told people one thing but put it in their wills a different way, what's in the wills 100% controls. Oh, by the way, Sam, it doesn't matter if stepmom Sally had left her estate in 3 portions to Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett, who certainly don't need stepmom Sally's money. But the fact that who she left it to doesn't need it as much as you need it, 100% completely irrelevant. So, basically I'm saying, Sam, you're not getting diddly squat other than the $5,000 that stepmom Sally left you. Now, this story happens over and over and over and over again. Why does this continue to happen? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One, Sam, while his father is alive, married to stepmom Sally, Sam wants his dad to be happy, so he doesn't create any rift between himself and stepmom Sally. Stepmom Sally, on the other hand, wants her husband to be happy, so she tolerates Sam and puts up with Sam. But once dad dies, he's the connection keeping Sam and stepmom Sally together. Then really all bets are off, and maybe intentions that were had while dad was alive get changed after dad dies. I don't have to tell you, enough people tell me, Paul, I know that when people die, it changes people, and when people have to fight over money, it brings out the worst in people. But I think once that connection, dad passed away, it changed things. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I've had many step parents in my office tell me, yes, I married my husband. He had 3 children. I don't have any children of my own, but I've taken those 3 children on as my own. I treat them just like they're my own, and I want to make sure they receive, an inheritance. That does happen. But it also happens the other way, where once dad dies and leaves ownership to stepmom leaves the entire amount to people other than dad's child or children. Now, how could things have been different? Well, tough one here, but the burden was on dad. And some might say, well, or Sam might say, well, nobody told dad he should have done anything different. That's one where I have to say, tough cookies. The burden's on dad to understand these types of things, to watch perhaps videos like this and read blogs like this, so that he understands that if he leaves ownership to his wife, that she can do whatever she wants to with it after dad passes away, including completely eliminating dad's child or children. So I'll put part of the burden on dad by not realizing the potential for this problem. And he could have left things in trust for his wife, so that when his wife died, those things in trust would go back to Sam. He could have left some things directly to Sam when dad died to make sure Sam receives an inheritance. So a little bit of a burden there on dad, maybe a lot. And then also on, we don't really know what happened with stepmom Sally. Was she kind of contemplating this the whole time, and kind of a scheme to get, her 2-step process was, number 1, let's get dad to leave his estate to me. And then after dad dies, leaving ownership of his estate to me, I'm going to change my will and exclude Sam and leave it to my side of the family. So that was her little 2-step process to make sure that the entire estate, or certainly, 99.5% of it, goes to people other than dad's child, Sam. So maybe there was some manipulation there. I have no idea. And this problem occurs not only with wills, but I think it's even more prevalent in the area of IRAs, because so many people have the bulk of their financial resources in IRAs. I've seen it 1,000 times. I'll see it another 1,000 times. Dad opens up his IRA account, and that's where most of his money is, and he has a second wife, and he has children from the first marriage, and he's just sitting there filling out his paperwork on the IRA account application. Name, address. The financial advisor says, you got to name a beneficiary. Do you want that to be your wife? He says, sure. What's your birth date? What's your investment selection? And then decades later, he dies. Wife is the beneficiary. Beneficiary designation controls over anything dad may have in his will. All goes to her. She leaves it to her side of the family. Dad's children get nothing. So we've seen it 1,000 times. We're going to see it another 1,000 times. Maybe you can have an impact on people. If you know someone who is in a maybe step-parent situation where this could happen, you may want to share this video with those people. Also, make sure you punch the thumbs up button and slam the subscribe red button along with the notification bell, so the YouTube algorithms will share these videos with more people, and so that you don't miss anything. Okay, happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. Kind of tinkered with Mother's Day by putting a kind of stepmother issue in there, but it's an important issue. You gotta address it the right way in advance. I'm tired of hearing the problems after the fact when they can't be addressed. Gotta be addressed before the fact. Y'all have a great day. Y'all take care.